According to Julia Wood, a professor at the University of North Carolina, less than 2% of women work in, quote, corporate managements of newspapers, and only 5% of, quote, television writers, executives, and producers are women, end quote. These striking statistics are the most likely reason why, according to Wood, women, quote, are so consistently portrayed negatively, end quote, in the media. This leads me to my research question. How do gender stereotypes portrayed in the media negatively impact both male and female viewers? Media are a large part of most people's lives, ranging from television shows to movies to magazines. Furthermore, gender stereotypes in the media negatively affect both women's and men's social and psychological states, as well as their future careers. To delve deeper into this notion, the media shapes societal norms about behavior for both men and women. Monique Ward, a professor of psychology at the University of Michigan, and Petal Grower, a graduate student at the same college, explain how viewing media more frequently will lead both men and women, quote, to cultivate or adopt social attitudes that align with the content presented, end quote. In other words, media create behaviors and attitudes that men and women feel they need to adopt. Men, according to Wood, are generally, quote, represented as hard, tough, independent, sexually aggressive, unafraid, violent, and in no way feminine, end quote. This makes the men who view said media think that that is how all men should behave, and thus they begin to act the same way, violent, aggressive, and brave. This is what masculinity truly is, according to the media, and if a man does not show the aforementioned traits, then he is usually not considered masculine enough to be a man at all. By contrast, according to Wood, women are portrayed in the media as, quote, dependent, ornamental objects whose primary functions are to look good, please men, and stay quietly on the periphery of life, end quote. Similar to men, these media representations of women claim that all females should look and behave like their media counterparts, beautiful, passive, and dependent on men. All of these stereotypes in media usually result in the cementing of gender-specific behaviors. Because aggressive men and passive women are more socially acceptable, both men and women will behave as such. Furthermore, gender stereotypes lower women's self-esteem and confidence. For example, in sports, as Claudia Rankine, professor of poetry at Yale University, notes, there are distinct stereotypes that audience members want to see in their female athletes, white, blonde, and feminine. Such stereotypes determine, quote, who's worthy, who's desirable, who's associated with the good life, end quote. Female athletes in sports may lose confidence and self-esteem if they are not the stereotypical white, blonde woman who critics often see as more valuable. Indeed, because sports in general are more stereotypically masculine, according to Phumzile Mlamba Ngcuka, the executive director of UN Women, quote, many girls abandon sport entirely, end quote. For a myriad of girls, sports are a way to express themselves. They increase confidence and, as Mlamba Ngcuka explains, they build community, teamwork, and a sense of belonging. However, when girls decide to listen to social norms and gender stereotypes built by the media, they abandon the one place they feel comfortable, worthy, and special. Consequently, these girls' self-esteem plummets because they no longer have the community that sports so often build. In other words, they no longer have people telling them that they can succeed, and thus they do not believe it to be true. To progress further on this topic, gender stereotypes portrayed in children's television shows can ruin a child's future. According to Hannah Gaspard, Benjamin Nagengast, Kirsten Oschatz, Katharina Scheiter, Ulrich Treitwein, and Ike Wheel, all researchers and psychologists at the University of Tübingen, quote, television shows are a central part of children's everyday lives, end quote. Thus, children with their malleable minds fully believe what they see on television. The problem with this is that frequently there are an abundance of gender-based stereotypes in these television programs. Most prominent in them is the stereotype that women cannot go into science, technology, engineering, or math, STEM, fields. Jennifer Stevens Aubrey, an associate professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Arizona, and Ward observed that, quote, TV exposure is related to children's career aspirations, end quote. More specifically, however, television with stereotypes against women in STEM make girls believe that they are unable to go into a STEM-based career. Gaspard et al. Echo this notion, writing that, quote, gender differences in STEM careers can be linked to early emerging gender differences in math motivational dispositions, end quote. In other words, as mentioned before, STEM careers are linked to an early exposure to gender stereotypes, specifically to the television shows that promote them. However, many scholars believe that gender stereotypes portrayed in the media promote self-confidence. According to Pedro Bordello, Catherine Kaufman, Nicola Genaioli, and Andre Schleifer, professors at a myriad of different colleges, quote, women tend to overestimate their own performance in categories that are judged to be female-typed. The reverse is true for men, end quote. Bordello et al. Seem to note that even though women and men may not be overconfident in activities that are stereotypically for the opposite gender, they are extremely confident about activities that are for the same gender. On the surface, this may be a good thing. However, when women and men are overconfident about activities that are stereotypically for their gender, they usually lose confidence about activities that are not. Even Bordelot et al. Admit that women, quote, have been found to be less confident about their own ability in math and science than men, end quote. Math and science are stereotypically masculine fields, and because a myriad of gender stereotypes exist, insisting that females cannot go into said fields, women are usually less confident about their abilities in STEM. My first proposed solution for this problem is a program called He for She. He for She is a campaign that, quote, recognizes men and boys as partners for women's rights, end quote, according to UN Women. Theoretically, this program will, in fact, eliminate gender inequality by fully acknowledging the fact that feminism means the equality of both sexes, not just women. This possible gender equality would be an obvious implication to this solution. However, a possible limitation is that, according to Kathy Young, author of Ceasefire, Why Women and Men Must Join Forces to Achieve True Equality, He for She and the type of feminism it promotes has, quote, ignored sexist biases against males and sometimes has actively contributed to them, end quote. Without acknowledging the discrimination that men go through as well, gender equality will be unreachable. This leads me to my second and final solution, a campaign entitled Like a Girl. This movement aims to, quote, make sure that girls everywhere keep their confidence through puberty and beyond by tackling the societal limitations that stand in their way, end quote, according to Always. This is an obvious implication of the solution. Once implemented, the Like a Girl campaign will increase girls' confidence and will remind them that they can do anything. However, a limitation is that because this movement was produced by Always, a large company that sells feminine hygiene products, many people will not trust that it truly cares about gender equality at all. Charlotte Gill, a journalist who works for magazines such as The Independent and The Guardian, explains that, quote, this onslaught of patronizing guff demonstrates how brain-dead its executives must think women are, end quote. And therefore, not many people may be willing to trust Always enough to commit to this movement. However, despite this limitation, the campaign has already seemed to be successful in its goals. Always notes that 94% of people believe it has, quote, encouraged girls to be more confident, end quote. Of course, these girls can grow up believing that they can go into any career that they want, such as an athlete. They can fix the problems that scholars such as Malamba Nguka and Rankine note, that girls do not want to pursue stereotypically masculine careers. If girls want to play tennis or baseball or soccer or another sport, they should be able to do so, because despite what society may claim, they can. Thank you.
Kaitlyn, thanks here. The first question for you, how did you handle the differing perspectives in order to reach your conclusion?
Well, in the solution, actually, in the concluding paragraph, I use the differing perspectives of my proposed solution to explain what the limitations are. For example, in my second solution, I used Charlotte Gill, who explained that Always actually put up the Like a Girl campaign, and so they probably just want to profit off of the campaign rather than actually fix gender equality and make all genders equal. And in my first solution, the He for She campaign, I used Kathy Young, who's an author of Ceasefire, Why Women and Men Must Join Forces to Achieve True Equality, and she explained that this He for She campaign ignores men and their problems because they do have problems too. And so I use these as kind of limitations, and then I brought back why the second solution, the Like a Girl campaign, should be implemented.
Okay, thanks. Second question, what might the real world implications or consequences be of your findings, and what are the implications to your research community?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I'm asking you about the influences on others, their behavior, their decision-making process. So what might be other real-world implications to what you presented here today? And the second part of that question, what are the implications to your community? That's asking about those folks that have researched this same topic.
Okay. So for the first part of that question, what I've presented here today, I think I was attempting to appeal to not only women, but also men. I attempted that in my first claim paragraph, because as I've explained before, men do have problems too, and gender equality isn't just about women, it's also about men. And if we appeal to men, as I've attempted here, then we can not only get women on our side, but we can also get men, and they're basically half the world, and so they can see, they can put forth their input as well in order to make this world more equal in gender. And so for the second part of that question, how it can affect the community, well, what I have put out here today, as I've explained before, it can basically appeal to researchers as well. It can appeal to male researchers, and if they understand, if male and female researchers understand that men also have problems, then perhaps they can research men, and they can research both men and women. And if that happens, then I hope that the world will become equal in gender.
Okay. All right, thank you.